Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to the FPL Scope and this video where I'm going to go through each and every Premier League team and their starting lineups for this season. I'm going to try to project what I think is going to be the starting lineup over the course of the season for each and every Premier League team. And you can find this as well, not just in this video, but also in written form in the Fantasy Premier League guide that I make every single summer. And you can find that at thefplscope.com/FPL guide. You can check out both the starting lineups and also a bunch of different things, like for example, a lot of different squad suggestions that I have. You have the template squad where you have the most commonly picked players. You have the differential squad where you have a squad of 15 players consisting of 15 players that are owned by less than 100% in total. So total ownership is less than 100%. You also have the early wildcard squad if you want to go super aggressive and go wildcard in after Game Week 3 and load up on Arsenal players, for example, because they have pretty good fixtures in Game Week 1 and Game Week 3, but not Game Week 4 and 5, for example. That's a different tactic you can use. And also the whole season squad, a zombie squad, where you're supposed to pick the same team that is going to last from Game Week 1 all the way up until Game Week 38 without any changes and see how well you can do. These have been updated fairly recently, but I'm going to update them over the course of this upcoming week as well, leading into the FPL launch, basically, or the launch of Premier League. Pretty much the first game on Friday between Fulham and Man United. But that's not what we're going to look into today. We're going to look into the starting lineup. As you can see from the contents here, there is a section that says starting lineups. So let's press that and we go all the way straight down to the 20 Premier League starting 11 predictions. Again, this is just predictions. I don't really know what is going to be the case for each and every team. I've just tried to make my best guess in terms of who played last season for them, what has changed in terms of transfers and trends in terms of players playing, whether it's in preseason or stuff like that. And there are some other things to note here. These are not Game Week 1 lineups, so there are several players here that will not play at the start of the season, but will still come into the fold eventually. Someone like Foden, for example, who is not expected to play in Game Week 1 from the start, he is still in the starting lineup for Man City because he's going to play over the course of the season and a certain amount of games as a starter, probably among the 11 highest starting players in Manchester City this season. So yeah, the number on the kit, as you'll see, is not the number that they actually have for the squad. The number represents how many matches out of 38 do I think they will start. It's basically just the amount of starts that you'll see. We'll get to that when we actually look at the teams. I'll explain more when we get to that. Obviously, I'm going to update these lineups up until the Game Week 1 deadline. After that, maybe I should continue to update them, but usually this guide has just been a preseason guide. And once the season starts, we're into regular FPL content, so I don't really pay too much attention to that. I don't really spend too much time fixing it because I don't really think the guide is too much about mid-season, because that's not what my videos are about, basically. But yeah, so in terms of transfers that haven't really properly been confirmed yet, my confirmation of when I put them into the lineup is when Fabrizio Romano says, "Here we go," on a tweet. Obviously, it's not 100% accurate whenever he says that. It doesn't always materialize into a transfer, but most of the time it does. So there are potentially some players that haven't really been officially added to teams yet that might be in the squad already, and that's because they have gotten the famous "Here we go" from Fabrizio Romano, pretty much. So yeah, the final point, any help, tips are welcome. I'm a West Ham fan only. I'm not really super into every single team, especially the newly promoted teams. Someone like Ipswich, for example, don't really know too much about them. I've done some research, obviously. I've looked into what their squad looked like last season, but if anyone has any insider information or even just like regular information, if you're a fan of one of these teams and you recognize something that I've gotten wrong, potentially, please tell me in the comment section. So yeah, obviously you can go through the timeline on this video and go through and find your team, pretty much, if you support a team, for example, and then you can come with your suggestions for what I should do to change the potential starting lineup this season. But with that out of the way, let's go into why you're here, looking at all the different teams and their starting lineups. And we're going to start with Arsenal, the first team, and we're going to go work our way down alphabetically, basically. So here we go with Arsenal. The thing with Arsenal now, which is kind of different from last season. Last season it was pretty easy to determine who was going to play for Arsenal. It was only basically the Martinelli Trossard spot and then the Jorginho Partey spot, which was kind of contentious. The rest of the team was pretty much locked in. Maybe the left back spot as well with Zinchenko and some other players. But now, especially the back line is very much in contention. I feel like all players could potentially be rotated, but I feel like Gabriel, Saliba and White are still going to be pretty nailed, especially Saliba. I think he's going to be really nailed. Ben White as well. I don't really see anyone else playing right back that much for Arsenal. Maybe Urian Timber sometimes. I think those two are pretty much locked. Gabriel, I think he's still going to be the left centre-back most of the time for Arsenal, but I think Calafiori, who I have as the left-back here, which I think he will actually play quite a lot as, both Timber and Calafiori can play left-back. Timber can obviously play all across the back line, so he's going to be filling in the gaps, basically. But with him coming back from a long-term injury, I don't think he's going to be a certain starter for Arsenal this season, maybe next season. But yeah, the backline is pretty much the biggest point of contention here. There's going to be more rotation that we were used to from previous years. We saw the start of last season that Gabriel was benched a couple games, which obviously has made us all a bit aware of Gabriel and being a bit worried about him getting benched in the future, because that could potentially happen. But over the course of the season, I think Calafiori will play mostly at left back. Some games, some of these 24 starts, as you can see on the kit number here, I assume that Calafiori will, or project that Calafiori will get 24 starts out of 38 possible this season. I think most of them will come at left back. Some of them will come at left centre back rather than Gabriel. And that's why Gabriel has 29 projected starts in my opinion, because I think he's going to be close to what he had last season. I'm not exactly sure what he had. I think he had like 30, 34, 33 potentially last season. But I think he'll get slightly less because they have a couple more options now this season. And they probably want to rotate the team a little bit more. When it comes to the midfield, Rice and Ødegaard, of course, are pretty much nailed. Saka is obviously nailed. Havertz as well, whether he plays as a striker or if he fills in as the final midfielder in that midfield spot next to Rice and Ødegaard. He's going to play a lot of matches, 32 matches I have him projected starting. But obviously you have Gabriel Jesus who can play as a striker. You can play Trossard as a striker as well. You can see the contenders here for starts. I think Trossard is the one closest to the starting lineup, 23 projected starts. Him and Martinelli are going to be rotating a bit on that left wing spot as well. And Trossard can play in the middle. He can play up front as well. He's very versatile as well, so he's going to be pretty good in that regard. Arsenal obviously also are after at least a centre mid. I think Mikel Merino is the one closest to going to Arsenal, but we'll see if they get that over the line or not. I think that would make sense because I don't think Jorginho should be the main starter for a team that is looking to win a Premier League title. I think Jorginho is a great player, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's going to be the certain starter for a team that is going for the title, basically. So it seems like that's happening. Maybe a striker is happening, but it feels like Havertz and Jesus is enough for Arsenal as of now. Haven't really been linked with too many strikers. Maybe they go for Osimhen, maybe they go for Tony eventually this season. Who knows? But as it stands, I think Havertz is going to play mostly up front, but I'm not entirely sure he's going to play every single game up front either. So I'm not too hyped about Havertz. I think he could potentially be really, really good. He was one of the best players in FPL towards the end of last season, but I'm not completely sure he's going to play striker every single game, especially with Gabriel Jesus looking pretty good in preseason as well. But that's pretty much Arsenal. I hope that makes sense. If you have any queries, anything that you think is incorrect, then please let me know in the comments. Let's move on to Aston Villa, which is another team that is pretty hard to predict because they have so many players, especially in the midfield area. You can see I have projected Onana, Tielemans, and McGinn as the main starters in the trio. McGinn obviously can play out wide on the left as well. On top of that, they have quite a fluid formation with Unai Emery. But I think Rodgers, after what he's done in preseason, what he did towards the end of last season, I think he's going to be the main starter at left wing. But obviously you have McGinn who can play there. You can also play with Ramsey, for example, on the left. You also have brought in Jaden Philogene from Hull from last season, who came back to Aston Villa because he used to be a youngster for Aston Villa back in the day as well, or a season ago, pretty much. So the left wing spot is pretty contentious. When it comes to the right wing spot, Bailey has one less opponent now, or one less rival, I guess, for that place, because Diaby went to Saudi Arabia. So I think Bailey is going to be pretty nailed. And obviously Watkins up front is going to be super nailed as well. 35 matches, even for the first game week when he hasn't had any preseason. I think he's going to start still against West Ham. But that's, again, not what this projection is about. This is about the whole season. And Watkins, I have 35 starts. So not too many starts for John Duran, who I don't really have listed as a potential starter in any of these categories either. Left back, Maatsen has come in, and I think he's going to start over Digne and Alex Moreno. I think that's pretty certain. I did have Digne and Alex Moreno as like potential starters here, but I removed them because I think Maatsen should be the main guy here. Centre backs, Diogo Carlos is leaving, it seems. He's still a potential starter. If he stays, he could play as a centre back and Konsa out at right back. But it seems like Aston Villa are going for Gertruida from Gertruida, is that what his name is? From Feyenoord at least, who played under Arne Slot last season. With Feyenoord, it seems like he's on the way at right back. You also have Nedeljkovic, or whatever his name is, from Serbia, who's 18 years old, who they brought in January, loaned out to Red Star Belgrade, and then they got him back for this summer. He's been playing a bit in preseason. He could also play a right back. But at the very least, I think Matikash, or Miatkiewicz, as he's known in Poland, I think he is on the outs in terms of starting at least. It could be Konsa, could be Gertruida, it could be this young Serbian guy. But yeah, not completely sure. When it comes to the midfield, they've sold Douglas Luiz and they brought in Onana and Barkley, and they already had Kamara, who's back from injury, Tielemans, McGinn. So many central midfielders. Ramsey as well can play in central midfield as well. Buendia can play centrally, attacking wise. So they just have a lot of options there. But I feel like Onana, Tielemans, and McGinn are going to be the preferred trio here. Maybe Kamara even plays as a centre back. He has done that in the past, but I don't know. Maybe he plays the centre back and Konsa out at right back, but I don't think so. Haven't really seen any indication of that as of yet, but yeah, we'll see. Anyways, that's Aston Villa. I think Rodgers is the most interesting player here. 26 starts I have him projected with. I think that's mostly just because of Villagen coming in as well. I think they can play together as well. Rodgers can play a bit in midfield as well, and also some as striker-ish. So yeah, he's a pretty interesting player for 5.0, but I think for the start of the season, I think he's going to be pretty nailed. But once they get more rotation with Champions League and all that stuff coming up, he's going to be more rotated than you hope for a good fancy Premier League asset, basically. But yeah, that's Aston Villa pretty much. Let's move on to Bournemouth. I'm going to try to not talk too much about each and every team, because I think my voice is going to be lost by the end of this video if I keep talking about each team for 5 minutes. But obviously the big thing with Bournemouth is the fact that Dominic Solanke was just sold to Spurs. That means they're going to have a new striker, whether they are buying a new striker now or they're going to just put faith in Enes Ünal once he's back from injury. You can see he has an injury marker here. He's not ready for the start of the season, but I think over the course of the season, he's going to be the starter, as of right now at least, because they don't really have anyone as a striker, like a striker transfer materializing just yet. But it seems like they are looking for someone to play that position. Semenyo can also play up front some, but I think he's mostly going to be on the right wing. He is also a really, really good player. They have a lot of good wingers as well with Tavernier, Semenyo, Kluivert as well can play on the wing. Dango, Sinistera, they have a lot of good wingers in general. Midfield, Christie can play here in the number 10 role as well. But I think he's going to be played next to Alex Scott, who's going to be a pretty good player this season. Araujo, this is another example, or one of the examples of players that have gotten the here we go from Romano. He's not officially a Bournemouth player yet, but he is a right back. Finally, they're going to get a proper right back. I mean, Max Aarons was supposed to be the new right back for them, but he didn't really work out. So I think Julian Araujo, this is not Ronald Araujo, not the main Barcelona guy. This is a different Araujo, but he's still pretty good, and he's still looking like a good signing, I think, for Bournemouth. So I think he's going to be playing at right back. You also have Huijsen who came from Juventus, who could play centre back rather than Sabarni and Senesi, but I think these two guys will still start. And obviously Lloyd Kelly left for Newcastle as well, so less competition there when it comes to Sabarni and Senesi. Milos Kerkez I have as the left back. I'm not entirely sure. He was a bit rotated last season. Dango can play at left back as well, so we'll see what happens with that position. But that's pretty much it. We also have Neto in goal. It seems like he's going to be the starter, but we also saw him ditched for Travers last season. So I have 34 projected starts, and this is the tricky thing with goalkeepers, that usually when goalkeepers are made, the first goalkeepers, number one goalkeepers, people don't tend to switch goalkeepers throughout the season. It's just if they're really, really bad and the team is really, really struggling. So I don't think Neto is going to play 34 matches. I think he's either going to be dropped earlier and play like half the matches, or he's going to be playing 38 matches pretty much. But it remains to be seen if he stays as the number one goalkeeper, or if Travers gets to play, or if they bring in another goalkeeper. They did bring in Alex Paulsen, but he's been loaned out again, so he's more for the future, I guess. So I think Neto's going to start in goal for Bournemouth pretty much. Let's move on to Brentford. Also, I have additional notes here for each and every team. I'm going to do this in this video. I'm just going to talk about the teams in general, so I'm not going to care that much about the notes, but in the guide you actually have some notes about what could happen and some stuff to watch out for each team, basically. Let's move on to Brentford. Ivan Toney is back, and his potential replacement in the future, Igor Thiago, is out injured. So he could be the starter eventually, especially if Tony gets sold. But Tony, for now, is going to be the starting striker. Fabio Carvalho has joined Brentford as well. It's official now. He looks like a decent player to play at the left wing for them. Other than that, their team is pretty similar to last season. It's just the fact that they have some players back from injury. Henry was out. Rico Henry was out last season. Hickey was out last season. Ben Mee, I actually have gotten some recent information that he might not be the preferred candidate. Maybe they play Collins instead. So I'm going to actually adjust his number because 36 is a bit much. But he played a lot of matches last season. But it seems like his starting spot is up for grabs a little bit. So I'm going to change that number right as I finish this video, actually. But yeah, Ben Mee and Pinnock I have as the centre backs. Could be Collins rather than Ben Mee. Could also have Christopher Ayer playing at right back rather than Hickey. Brentford tend to switch up formations. We've all seen, or not all, but a lot of people have seen the Sky Sports interview with Thomas Frank, where he discusses when he plays 3 at the back and when he plays 4 at the back. He switches up formations from time to time. But I think mostly it's going to be these players anyway. It could be Collins alongside Pinnock and Mee, and then have a different kind of thing here with 2 strikers. Usually it's what they do when they play 3 at the back, depending on who they face. It's usually against the bigger teams. I think they do play 3 at the back or 5 at the back, depending on how you define it, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Other than that, Johan Wissa is the main guy potentially starting, apart from these players lined up here, but I think Carvalho will play more. I think Carvalho is a pretty good option for 5.0 as well. I think he's someone to pay attention to. 28 projected starts I have for him. And Mbeumo is obviously super nailed, 36 potential or projected starts. I can't really see him being dropped for any reason whatsoever, basically, because he is Brentford's, well, I guess second most important player next to Tony. But Tony is probably not going to be there for long. I feel like he's been flirting with leaving Brentford for a long while now, so wouldn't be surprised to see Mbeumo play more later on in the season, especially from January onwards when Igor Thiago leaves. Tony could leave, or Igor Thiago leaves when Igor Thiago is back from injury, and Tony could potentially leave at that point. And then I think Thiago would play striker with Mbeumo still at right wing, pretty much. But yeah, that's Brentford. Let's move on to Brighton, another team that is going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen with them. Are some question marks here. I think Milner in midfield. It seems like, judging from preseason, he's going to be preferred in midfield, actually, next to Mats Wiefer. They also brought in Brian something. I can't remember his name exactly, but he's supposed to be a really good player from Mainz. He's like an attacking mid/right winger, so that's maybe making Minte less of an option at right wing. Potentially, but it feels like Minte, judging from preseason, he's going to be the main guy at right wing. Obviously, with March still out injured, March's going to come back at some point. They're going to play a lot of matches, but I think Minte is going to be slightly preferred to March from what I've seen already. Mitma's back, obviously, he's really good. The left back position is also interesting. Estupinan is injured, as you can see with the little logo here. So Barco is going to be starting for now at the start of the season. I think Estupinan will be back as the starter eventually once he's back from injury. But I wouldn't be too surprised to see Barco start either. Then we have someone like Adingra who can play both on the left and the right. He could be a potential differential option to Minte at right wing as well. I think Mitoma is going to be pretty nailed. He has 33 starts projected for me. Up front, it's also pretty interesting. Joao Pedro, I think, is going to play a lot, whether it's on the wing or as an attacking mid or as a striker. Brighton as well will change between formations. It seems like 4-4-2 is the preferred formation currently in preseason. Like nominally, it's sort of a 4-4-2 formation. But yeah, Joao Pedro, I think, is going to play quite a lot of games regardless. I have 31 predicted starts for him. And then Evan Ferguson, he has to be, once he's back from injury, he has to have his breakout season, basically, because we were told last season that he was going to be a world beater striker, and then didn't really play that much. But obviously, yeah, Welbeck as another contender for starts. He has always been a pretty heavily used player for Brighton, so I could see him starting as a striker as well. Midfield, I think Baleba as well should probably play more than Milner eventually for the course of the season. But for now, it seems like Milner is going to be preferred. But obviously Milner, 24 predicted starts. He can't play every game, obviously. But Brighton have less fixtures to think about this season because they are not in Europa League like they were last season, pretty much. I think that's pretty much it. Lamptey could potentially play right back over Veltman, but he is injured all the time. So yeah, wouldn't hold my breath when it comes to that either. For Bruggen, it's also injured currently, so it might be Steele from the start of the season, but I think Verbruggen is going to be the preferred goalkeeper onwards in this season. They're not going to do the same thing as they did with the Serbi, where they rotate goalkeepers. A lot of rotation. You can see this number here as well. Last season's 11 nailed on us, basically. This is it's an average of each starter, how many starts they got out of 38 matches. And Brighton, it's very low. 22.9 is really, really low. Because the Serbi kept rotating his team. I don't think it's going to be the same with Hursuler, but we don't really know yet either. Depends what happens with the team. They have a lot of options, so wouldn't surprise me to see a lot of rotation still, even though they don't have Europa League and they also have a new manager. I think there's going to be less rotation, but there still might be quite a lot of rotation for Brighton. Speaking of rotation and a lot of players, we have Chelsea, who have an enormous squad, and it just keeps expanding as well, it seems like. A lot of different potential starters here you can see as well. Just a lot of people to choose from. I go with Jurgensen in goal. I think he's going to be the starter eventually, or potentially even from the start of the season, but Sanchez is obviously a different contender there. It seems like they're going to fight it out for the number one spot, with Petrovic being relegated to the bench, I guess. Then we have Cucurella, who seems to be the preferred starter at left back now. Could also obviously play Colby at left back, but it seems like he's going to play more centrally this season. You also have Chilwell, obviously, who's another potential starter, but he's always injured. Can't really count on him that much. Centre back, I recognize now that I actually have Badiashile both on the bench and as a starter. I think one of them is going to be Fofana. Is supposed to be Fofana. He's here as well. There's just so many. Tosin Adarbayo is probably the one I'm looking for. So this should probably be Tosin Adarbayo in the graphic. We're going to change that as well after the video. Or it could be Badiashile. That is really hard to tell. I think Colwell is going to be pretty nailed, but next to him could be Badiashile, could be Fofana, could be Tosin, like I mentioned. They have a lot of different options there as well. I think Gusto will play right back mostly. James is obviously both suspended and injured. He's already injured, James. So that's why I don't think he's that likely of a starter, even though at his top level he's really, really good, obviously. Then in midfield, you have a lot of options as well. Enzo Fernandez is another interesting one. Is he going to play a lot? Is he going to play not too much? Hard to know. There's obviously the whole racism thing in the summer as well with the teammates. How is that going to make things awkward between him and the teammates? Don't really know what to make of Enzo Fernandez for this season, pretty much. But they also have Dewsbury Hall, who was brought in by Maresca to Chelsea. And Caicedo as well. I think they just have to play because they paid so much money for him. Also, Romeo Lavia, this is not really FPL relevant, really, because he's not really that much of an alternative when it comes to FPL, but I think he's a really, really good player as well. He was so good at Southampton. He was just injured all of last season, so I think he could potentially be a starter as well. Then they also have Chukwuemeka. They also have several other players that I haven't listed here as well. It's just a big squad that it's going to be really difficult to choose from. I think Nkunku and Palmer are going to be pretty nailed. I think Neto's going to play quite a lot of matches. Nicholas Jackson, for now, is still the main striker. He's a pretty good striker as well. I think he's going to have a really good season. So there's going to be a lot of rotation, but I think Nkunku and Palmer are really, really good alternatives if you're looking for FPL players to choose from, which is pretty much why you're on this video, I think. Let's move on to Crystal Palace. This is a pretty simple team to choose from, I guess. They do have Ismail Assar, who I have with a lot of projected starts, 25 even. I think him and Kamada will change a little bit. They can switch the formation around a little bit as well. Glasner and Crystal Palace. In goal, it should not be Johnson, it should be Henderson. Again, something that should change. I probably should have done this before I made the video, but either way, that is supposed to be Henderson. He's going to be the main starter now, for sure. So I got to fix that in the guide, because I thought earlier in the season that Johnson was going to be the one, but it is actually going to be Henderson as the starter. Then we have Chadi Riyad, who's a new centre-back next to Anderson and Guehi. Depends if Guehi stays or not, but 38 projected matches, I think that's the same as last season. So if he stays, he's going to play pretty much every single game, start pretty much every single game for Crystal Palace, which I think is potential or possible there. You have Daniel Munoz as well at right wing back, Mitchell left wing back. Going to be interesting to see those guys. Adam Wharton, who was fantastic last season. Decore, who is really, really good, but was injured when they went on that really good run with Glasner last season. Mateta up front, I think, is super underrated as an FPL asset eventually this season. I've seen a lot of people write him off because he's too expensive. later on in the season as well. He's obviously just back from the Olympics, so he's not going to be the best pick from game week 1, but I think he's going to be a really good pick eventually. Eze, going to play pretty much every single game for Palace, and then Kamada as well. I think he's going to play quite a lot. He can also drop deeper and play down here with Ismail Assar playing here. That's a different opportunity as well for Crystal Palace, pretty much. Then we move on to Everton. And when it comes to Everton, we have a couple different things that are different from last season, but mostly it's pretty much the same from what we had last season with Sean Dyche. Iliman Ndiaye is the new guy at the second striker sort of position, where Danjuma sort of failed to live up to expectations last season. We also have Jesper Lindström at right wing, who can play there. We also have Harrison, who can play right wing as well. Onana has left, so that means that we're going to have Doucouré and Garner here. Doucouré actually played in this attacking mid position before, but I think he's going to play more centrally this time around with Ndiaye coming in up front, or not up front, but as the second striker in this squad for Everton. The other contentious spot here is Patterson at right back. Ashley Young played mostly right back last season. Patterson is still sort of developing, and we have, I think, at least for me, I have expected him to be the starting right back for Everton the last few seasons, but he hasn't really made that place his own, sometimes due to injury, sometimes due to bad performances and stuff, but I think he is the likely starter eventually for Everton. So I picked him as the right back. Other than that, it's pretty much not that contentious when it comes to Everton. They don't really have too many players. They haven't really done too many signings. They have Ndiaye and Lindström, obviously, but they do struggle with financial trouble, so I don't think there's that many candidates in terms of starters. Idrissa Gana Gueye is obviously going to play quite a lot of matches. Garner can play on the wing as well, on top of being a central midfielder. But other than that, not really too much to talk about with Everton. Calvert-Lewin up front, most likely. You have Beto and Tremiti, who could play up front, but I think Calvert-Lewin, as long as he stays fit, he's going to be the starting striker for Everton for sure. Let's move on to Fulham, which is a slightly more interesting team, I guess. They have some different options that they can go with. Right wing position is the most interesting for me. Adama Traore has looked really, really good in preseason. We all know the potential that he has. We've talked about his potential for quite a while now. He's in his mid-20s, I think, now. But he is, when used correctly, a really good asset to have, and it seems like he's been used correctly in preseason, so he could be a really good player for Fulham. It will be on the left alongside Robinson on the left-hand side here. Has been a really nice pairing. Iwobi has been going more centrally, and Robinson has been able to roam forward. Castani has been more like a defensive type of fullback, either Castani or Kenetete, but Robinson's going to play quite a lot of matches, 36 projected starts for me. Kevin Bass is as well, obviously a huge player for Fulham. They're also looking to sign Diogo Carlos, who could play here, rather than Issa Diop, who is like a average level Premier League centre back, pretty much. Andreas Pereira could play in the 10, but Emil Smith-Rowe, I think, is going to be the preferred player in this position, which means that Andreas plays more deep in central midfield, next to Reed, potentially. Maybe they get a new player. They also have Lukic, who can play here, Sasa Lukic. Other than that, really not too much to talk about. I think Muniz is going to be a pretty certain starter. I have 33 projected starts for him. And I haven't even listed Raul Jimenez as a potential starter, because I think Muniz, R9, as he is called now, is going to be the main striker. Also, as you can see from the squad number, the fact that he got number 9 now tells you that he's going to be the one to lead the line for Fulham, and I think he's going to do a really good job at it. You also have Leno at the back, who's going to be really secure, 38 starts for him. No reason to swap him out as well. That's pretty much it for Fulham. Let's move on to Ipswich, and this is where I'm struggling a bit more. I'm usually, or mostly, relying on what I know from the Championship, which isn't quite as much as I know from the regular Premier League teams. Ipswich haven't been in the Premier League for quite a while. What I do know is the fact that they do tend to play in a 4-2-3-1 formation now, but they also switch it up a bit and play with a 3 at the back formation sometimes. That could be the case now as well with Tuansebe, as well as the final centre-back, whose name is escaping me now, who played as the centre-back next to Wolfen last season. But now that Greaves has come in from Hull, he's going to be the main starter in the centre-back position. You also have to take into account Leif Davis, or Leif Davis, however you want to call him. In Norwegian we say Leif, but in English I guess we say Leif. He's the main guy for Ipswich, playing as a pretty offensive left-back as well at points. And they could also play the 3 at the back formation, like I said, where Johnston could be more tucking in as a central midfielder, which is something that he did at West Ham as well, where you could play it in central midfield as well. I think Johnson is a really good signing for Ipswich. I think he is a pretty versatile and nice player to have at right back or centre mid for Ipswich pretty much. Other than that, in goal they've changed since last year. They had Hladky as the goalkeeper last season, and they did a straight goalkeeper swap with Burnley, with Arjen Muric coming in as the goalkeeper. He's going to start every single game for them as well. Chaplin, really important player for them in sort of the second striker attacking midfield position. He's going to play a lot here. Luongo and Morsey played mostly last season in this double pivot that Kieran McKenna likes to use as well. Hutchinson has been brought in permanently from Chelsea. He's going to be the right wing player mostly. And then Broadhead, I think, is just what I suspect who I suspect is going to play the most matches at left wing. But if you're an Ipswich fan and you think I'm completely wrong, please tell me in the comments, and I'll make the appropriate changes to the team, I guess. But Delap as well is a new striker brought in from Man City. I think it's going to be the starting striker. Pretty much, I don't think there's too much to say there. Hurst as well, who's injured now, I think. He could play a striker as well, but Delap is the preferred striker, in my view, from what I can tell from Ipswich. Let's move on to Leicester, another newly promoted side, a team that finished on about the same amount of points as Ipswich last season, but they also have lost Dewsbury Hall, and they've also lost their manager since last season and haven't really strengthened too much either. They got Nokoli, who I think is going to be starting next to Woodfors in central defence. And they also have the Cordova-Reid from Fulham, who can play a bit across the attacking positions here for Leicester. When it comes to the striker position, Vardy, I guess, the tried and true. Patson Daka is still there. Obviously, Kelechi Iheanacho has left. He's gone to Sevilla now, gone to a better team, better situation for him, thankfully for him. But yeah, the striker position is the biggest question mark. They can play Mavididi up front sometimes. He's the main man for Leicester as well. He's going to play a lot of matches, whether it's on the left, right, middle. He can play a bit across the board as well, Mavididi, but he's going to be a really important player for them. The striker position is still the biggest question mark. Centre mids, Harry Winks is going to play a lot of matches. Indeed, he's going to play a lot of matches as well, maybe even more than 29 that I projected. Then when it comes to fullbacks, they have a couple different options here as well. Should also take note of Buonanotte, who's new on loan from Brighton. He could also play right wing with Fatahouer, or he can play as the number 10. So he's also an interesting player. Soumaré is going to play a bit in midfield as well, so he's a potential other starter. And then we have Christensen, who could play left back. He was on loan last season and now he's back, but Justin is tried and true. He's also a big Fantasy Premier League player himself, so we got to give him the props and have him as the starter for Leicester. But yeah, Leicester, not so sure about them this season. Especially with the manager leaving and Dewsbury Hall leaving and without too many new players in. But this is basically the projected lineup I have for Leicester this season. Moving on to Liverpool. They also have a new manager, and they also have they actually have a lot of different things where we're not exactly sure who's going to play, especially when it comes to the forward positions with Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota, Darwin, and Kakpo. It's really tough to see who's going to start there. Same with the centre mids. McAllister is going to play a lot of matches. Endo's going to play quite a bit, but not entirely every match. Same with Szoboszlai as well. They're going to be rotated a bit. They're also heavily linked to Subimendi, who could come in and play here next to McAllister. Gravenberch can play in midfield. Elliott can play in midfield. Jones can play in midfield. They have a lot of different options, both in midfield and in these positions. What we do know is Salah is going to play most of the matches. 33 projected starts for me. Trent as well, most likely going to play quite a lot of matches, but they also have Conor Bradley, who's been really good at right back, so maybe Trent plays a bit in this pivot role as well. We'll see what happens with that. When it comes to centre backs, it seems like Kwanzaa is going to be the preferred centre back rather than Konate next to Van Dijk. Which is good news for Fantasy Premier League managers, because he is only 4.5, so he's actually a decent shout for a centre-back. I think he's going to start 27 matches. That's my projected starts at least. But Konate is going to play quite a bit as well. That's why he's pretty likely, or the most likely out of these players to start, I think, over the likes of Bradley, Gravenberch, and Elliott. As you can see, more lefts among the names means that they are more likely to start. Pretty much. And that's it, I think, for Liverpool. Jota, I think he's going to start the season at least at striker. I think he's a much better striker than Darwin myself. I'm a huge fan of Jota and not that big of a fan of Darwin. And Kakpo as well. It's interesting to see with a new manager coming in from the Dutch league. Maybe he gets to play more, but Diaz has been the preferred left-wing player for Liverpool for the past few seasons as well. So I think that's going to continue. Moving on to Man City, another team that is filled with a lot of players that can play several positions, especially the centre-back position is going to be pretty contested. You have all these players can play centre-back basically, Guardiola, Diaz, Stones, Akanji. You also have Kyle Walker who can play at right back. You also have Ake who can play as left centre back or left back as well. So they have a lot of different people there. Rodri's going to be pretty nailed. Ederson's going to be pretty nailed. But I also have 35 matches for him because usually Guardiola for some reason likes to play Ortega for like 2 or 3 matches towards the end of the season when they've already won the league mostly. When it comes to offensive positions, the winger positions are really interesting. Grealish and Bernardo I have as the starters. There have been some reports that Bernardo is going to be playing more centrally and the right wing spot is going to be either Savinho or Oscar Pobb even. That might be the case. Left wing, Grealish, who is slightly injured now. He might be out for game week 1, so maybe he should have like a injury marker here next to his name. But him and Doku are most likely the ones playing at the left wing position, and then Bob and Savinho could play at right wing position, but I think Bernardo's going to play a little bit across the board in terms of both center midfield spots and also the right wing spots, pretty much. Haaland, main striker now. Alvarez is left. It doesn't seem like they're going to bring in a new striker, so they're really, really dependent on Haaland staying fit. Otherwise, they're going to have to play with a false nine or something like that. But I think that's pretty much it for City. Oscar Bobb, I think, is the one to mention here. 22 potential starts or projected starts I have for him. And he could get more potentially if he makes the right wing spot his own, because he's looked really, really good in preseason, and Guardiola clearly has a lot of faith in him, at least going forward. Savinho as well should not be discounted, but I think the fact that it's his first season, we've seen in the past, Grealish, his first season, didn't really play too much either. Doku played quite a lot last season, but he was not like a sure starter. I think it's going to take a little bit longer for Savinho to be like a main guy for City, but he's definitely someone to take note of for the rest of the season. For 6.5, I think he's worth in FPL, so he's definitely someone to consider eventually this season. Walker, not entirely sure about putting him out of the lineup. He could start, obviously, rather than Akanji at right back. But there's just so many centre backs that I feel like I need to play every single centre back across the board here. John Stones obviously is back and is a really good player. He could also play as like the deep lying defensive mid sort of thing here. They have a really weird formation, City. They don't really line up like this potentially like on the pre-match graphics. This is like pretty much how they play. Sometimes they have a double pivot here as well with Stones pushing up with 3 at the back with Walker as like the right centre back. But Guardiola's tactics are so fluid, and it's really hard to keep every single thought at once in your head when it comes to Guardiola and what he's going to figure out with his team. Yeah. Let's move on to Manchester United. They're City rivals, and the team City rivals. And they have some interesting things as well. Xerxes is the new striker transfer, and him and Højlund will be fighting it out for the striker spot, but we have heard from Ten Hag as well that they can play together as well. Could see that happening. The wing spots, I think Garnacho's actually going to play a lot of matches. 35 matches I have for him. You have Amad Diallo, obviously, but I think Rashford is actually lower down the pecking order than Garnacho now. At least he should be, because Garnacho has been better than Rashford for a long time. 35 starts is a bit much. I'm going to adjust that as well, down a little bit. But I think he's going to be a pretty sure starter, Garnacho. And he played quite a lot of matches last season. Bruno Fernandes is even more sure starter, so he should actually have a better number than Garnacho when it comes to potential or predicted starts. He's going to play in the attacking midfield role, most likely. You also have Mason Mount, who I think will fill in next to Kobe Mainoo. I think Kobe Mainoo is going to be the most important midfielder for Man United, so he has 33 predicted starts here. Then we have the centre-back, De Ligt and Mazraoui. Both of these two players haven't really been confirmed yet, but they've both gotten the here we go from Fabrizio Romano, which means that I think it's pretty much certain that they're going to be Manchester United players. And usually I would put Lenny Yoro as the centre-back, but now he's injured, so he's going to get less starts. He's going to be out for a couple months now, so I think eventually he's going to be the starter for Man United, but for now, probably will be Martinez and De Ligt, but they have so many injuries that you never know who's going to start there pretty much. Also the fullback situation, they have Dalot, who I think is a pretty vital member of the squad for them, so I think he's going to play sometimes on the left. Mazraoui can play on the left as well, so I think these two guys can play as the fullbacks quite a lot, but it's just uncertain who's going to play where. You also have Luke Shaw, obviously, but he's always plagued with injuries, which is still the case now, still from the end of last season, through the Euros and through now. He's still struggling with injuries, so that's why I don't really have him as a projected starter. I think Dalot and Masraoui can play in these positions, like I said. But Shaw obviously is going to play quite a bit of matches when he's healthy at left back, and then either Dalot or Masraoui will play at the right back position pretty much. Moving on to Newcastle, and they have interesting spots when it comes to right wing. I think Harvey Barnes is going to play most of the matches, but we have also seen Jacob Murphy play quite a lot of matches in preseason and also at the end of last season. When it comes to midfield, you have Longstaff and then Tonali, who's coming back from suspension in September, I think, so pretty close to coming back from suspension. He's going to play quite a lot of matches. Wilson's going to play a bit of matches as well, and then Isak's going to play either a right wing or like here, and then you could put Joe Linton down in midfield as well when you want to play Isak and Wilson together. We've seen that happen before. You also have the question of the left back and centre back position, because Botman is injured, so he's not listed here because he's out for a long while now. I think he's out until New Year's-ish, if I'm not mistaken. So that opens the door up for Byrne to be the centre back. You also obviously have Lloyd Kelly, who's a new player here, who can play both left back and centre back. But I think for now, Hall and Byrne are going to be the preferred players in these positions. But you can also see Byrne going out to the left and Kelly playing here. Botman, when he's back, is going to play here. There's a lot of uncertainty there. And Trippier is still here as well. He is potentially getting sold. That would open things up for Livramento to start at right back. But in general, I think, and also you have Mark Gahey, who's also linked with Newcastle. So there's a lot of different things when it comes to the defense for Newcastle. And I don't really trust anyone to start except for Fabian Schär. And he's like 5.5, I think, in general. And Trippier as well, most likely starts if he stays, but he's also a really high price. So I think the cut price Newcastle defenders, wouldn't really trust them to start. Maybe, I don't know. It's hard to know if Dan Burn is going to play left back if he doesn't play centre back or not. But that's the main issue with Newcastle. I think both the centre back position, centre back / left back position, and also right wing position are the most contentious spots. Also the midfield position here with Longstaff or Tonali, going to be a bit of a rotation thing there as well. I think Tonali, depending on what happens with him, maybe he just gets sold because there's so much bad blood now with all the stuff that happened with him and Milan and stuff. But if he's back, he's going to be a huge boost for Newcastle. If he's back to what he was back at Milan, he's going to be a really huge boost. Obviously, you have Anthony Gordon as well, 34 projected starts. He's going to start pretty much every game, even though Barnes can play there as well. I think Barnes is going to play on the right mostly. It seems like Almiron is leaving, so I don't even have him as a potential starter because it seems like he's going to go back to the MLS potentially. And a lot of Newcastle fans have soured on him since that purple patch that he had 2 seasons ago when he was an absolute FPL legend for a couple game weeks there. That's pretty much Newcastle. Let's move on to Nottingham Forest, another team that has had, at least previously, have had like a really bloated squad, but they've gotten rid of a lot of players and they've been more streamlined, I guess, for the Premier League now. When it comes to their team, centre mids, Yates and Sangare I have as the centre mids. You also have Danilo who can play there as well, and Anderson who can play both centre mid and on the wing spots. So it's a bit contentious there. I think Hudson-Odoi and Elanga will be the preferred wingers though. And Gibbs White obviously is the focal point of everything here as the main guy in the middle in attacking midfield. Then you have the striker position. You have Avoni and Wood sort of fighting it out for the striker spot. Seems like Wood is preferred, but I think Avoni and Gibbs White towards the end of not last season, but the season before that, they had a really nice connection. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Avoni takes over the starting spot from Wood either. Centre backs, they've gotten Milenkovic now from Fiorentina, really good centre back, and Murillo as well is one of the best players for Nottingham Forest. I feel like these two guys are a pretty good pair in terms of centre backs. In goal, I have Matsels. I don't really believe the hype in Carlos Miguel and the fact that he's tall and he's brought in to defend set pieces and stuff. I feel like Matsels is going to be the main goalkeeper there, but there's slight doubt, so I've taken down the starts from 38 to 34 because there is like a slight risk that maybe Carlos Miguel starts, but Matt Turner is not going to play ever again, I think, for them. Olaina at left back, going to be pretty certain starter, whether he plays left back or right back. And then you have Nico Williams, who I think is going to be the preferred right back for them as well. That's pretty much it for Nottingham Forest. Let's move on to Southampton, which is another newly promoted team. They've also made a lot of changes when it comes to Che Adams leaving, Stuart Armstrong leaving. Walker Peters was looking potentially to leave as well, but it seems like he's going to stay. And with Sugawara coming in at the right back, it's only natural to play Walker Peters at left back, which he has done in the past, obviously. Three at the back. Harvard Bellis is going to play a lot of matches. Bednarek and Stevens as well are going to play quite a few matches. Flynn Downs as well was really good last season, and he's back permanently now. And then Ariba and Smallbone, I'm not completely sure about these guys. You have Lallana, you can play Alcaraz there, you can play Manning there as well. In these midfield spots, they could fill in. When it comes to strikers, it seems like Brereton Diaz and Armstrong are going to play most matches for them. And that's a decent pair, decent options in FPL as well. Brereton Diaz is a pretty big darling when it comes to AI. I think that's mostly down to how many goals he scored in quick succession last season for Sheffield United, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to it, but he's still a pretty good candidate playing as a striker for Southampton. You know, he's listed as a midfielder, and he's going to be pretty nailed, so he's definitely someone to take note of when it comes to 5.5 midfielders in FPL. Goalkeeper Basunu seems like he's going to be the starter. Maybe they get a new goalkeeper, so that's why I have slightly less starts for him. Could get Ramsdale in on loan potentially. Would be surprised to see Ramsdale just stay with Arsenal. He should go to a different team. And Southampton seems like the perfect team for him because they really need a goalkeeper because Bazunu isn't that good, pretty much. Moving on to Spurs, and the big thing here obviously is Solanke has joined them. He's going to be the starting striker, sort of filling in the gap left by Harry Kane. He's more like a traditional striker compared to Richarlison, who was playing striker there for parts last season. Son obviously can also play as a striker, but now he's going to be more on the left for this season. Madison is actually slightly more under threat than you'd expect. You have Bergwall, who's been playing really good in preseason, who can play there. Kulusevski has also filled in as the number 10 quite a lot of matches as well, so it's actually quite contentious compared to what you expect. I actually think Brennan Johnson is more nailed than Madison. But they have a lot of alternatives there. Kulusevski can play on the right, obviously, which is where he's usually played. Timo Werner can play on every position apart from attacking mid. He can play on the winger spots or as a striker, so he's an option. You have Archie Gray as well. He can play both as a right back and as a centre mid. But you also have Bentancur and Bissouma and Papisar as well, who are three really good centre mids as well on top of Madison. So they could play more defensively and have all three of them. Bentancur as like the main offensive one. Instead, they also have Lo Celso, who I haven't listed here. He's also a different guy who could play a little bit, but we saw from Ange Postecoglou last season that he stuck with mostly the same team, especially the back line, and I think that's going to be the case again. It seems like Udogi is going to be back for Game Week 1. He just returned recently in preseason, so I think he's going to be fit to start for the start of the season, and for the course of the season, he's obviously going to be the starting left back for Spurs. Pedro Porro as well, even more nailed now with Emerson Royal leaving for Milan. He's going to be a secure starter. And then you have Romero and Van de Ven, who had a really good pairing last season before all the injuries and fatigue set in for them. And then obviously Vicario in goal, pretty certain starter there for Spurs as well. Let's move on to West Ham, which is the team that I have sort of the most information about because I am a West Ham fan. It's the team that I watched the most last season. But with West Ham, there's just so many new players that it's going to be a bit hard to predict. But I think the starting lineup is pretty much the lock. I feel like every single position is pretty secure. You can see most people have around 30 matches starting. The one exception is Paquetá, and that's not due to how nailed he is as a starter. It's down to him potentially being banned from January onwards. We don't really know yet when that ban is going to happen. It seems like it's going to be into the new year, so I think he's going to start most of the matches for West Ham. And he could be a really nice centre mid pairing with Alvarez. He can also play on the left, obviously, and also play as attacking mid. But I feel like Bowen, Kudus, and Somerville should play. And then Fulkrug as well, the new striker, leaving Antonio on the bench more times than not, most likely. But he's going to fill in as striker and also sometimes on the wing, I think, potentially, because he is usually, back in the day, he played as a winger and sometimes as a right back, but that's not going to be a problem now with Wan-Bissaka coming in. Kilman and Todibo, I think that's a great upgrade over Suma and Aguerd from last season. It's a huge upgrade in general. I feel like West Ham just have a lot more talent this season, so eventually West Ham are going to be a force to be reckoned with, I think, in FPL, but from the start of the season with a new system, a lot of new players, difficult matches, I think you probably should stay away from them, but they have some nice players with Kudus 6.5, Somerville 6.0, Bowen 7.5, and Fulkrug 7.0. You have all the different price ranges there. We can choose players. Paquetá as well is 6.0. He plays sometimes super offensively. He could also be a potential option. You also have Guido Rodriguez as well, another new signing who's center mid. You also have Ward-Prowse and Souček, again, another team with a bunch of center mids, but I guess that's also sort of in anticipation of Paquetá leaving or being banned from January onwards potentially, where they need a lot of bodies to play in midfield. Rodriguez should be better than Calvin Phillips at least. Souček, I think it was like kind of a darling in David Moyes' eyes, but I think with Moyes gone, I think Souček is going to play less. He's still a pretty effective and good player, obviously. He's not going to be ditched completely, but just the amount of talent that is here. Ward-Prowse doesn't even get to play in centre mid here, which is kind of crazy. Maybe he plays more than I expect. Maybe it will be Paqueta and on the left and Ward-Prowse here next to Alvarez. That could be the potential setup. But I think Kudus, Bowen are going to be playing mostly every game. Alvarez as well was dropped towards the end of last season for Moyes. For some reason, it seems like they had sort of a bit of a split towards the end of last season, but now that Moyes has left, doesn't really affect Alvarez's playing time, and he's a really good defensive midfielder as the Declan Rice replacement there for West Ham last season. Yeah, that's pretty much West Ham. Let's move on to the final team, which is going to be Wolverhampton. First thing here, which is a new icon, is the red card. Semedo is out suspended for the first game, I think, only. And then he's back, but he's going to be the starting right back, even though they did bring in a right back in the summer. Semedo is going to be the pretty much nailed right back for Wolverhampton. They also brought in Jørgen Strand Larsen, who I think is also an overlooked player. He's going to be really good, but obviously Wolves don't have the best fixtures to start the season, but I think he's going to be really, really good and set up Cunha and Hwang. It used to be Cunha and Neto here, but Neto left for Chelsea, so Cunha and Hwang is still a pretty good pairing here behind the striker Strand Larsen, who's really good at link-up play and stuff. He's going to be really, really good for Wolverhampton, I think. Centre-backs, they sold Max Kilman. We just saw West Ham with Max Kilman in the centre-back position. They haven't really brought in a replacement either, so I think Mosquera is going to play there. He's coming back from loan. He's played quite a bit in preseason, and I think he's going to start game week 1, so I think he's the most likely player to play alongside Totti and Dawson from last season. I expect Dawson to play more matches than last season in the absence of Kilman as well. And that's pretty much it for Wolverhampton, and that's pretty much it for every single team. You have these guys, Rodrigo Gomez, who's a new player, Sarabia and Bellegarde as well. Pretty talented players, especially Bellegarde. I really like watching him play. Yeah, I think Wolves have a really good team. They just need another centre-back. Maybe some consolidation in midfield. Joao Gomez is really, really good, by the way. Should also note him. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Wolves, and that's pretty much it for this video as well. Every single team. I even throughout this video, I've recognized some mistakes that I had in the guide. I'm going to change them immediately after this video. And like I said at the start of this video as well, if there's any team where you feel like I've gotten it wrong somehow, that maybe I picked the wrong starting lineup for some or picked the wrong player in the starting lineup in some cases, please let me know in the comment section. Or any other thoughts you have about lineups in general, and I can try to answer to the best of my abilities when it comes to the lineups. But any help appreciated. It takes a long time to do all the research and go through every single team and create the graphics and all that stuff for the guide. Well, not to create the graphics. It's buildlineup.com that I've used, which is a really nice site for making lineups pretty much. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You can also, I urge you to join the FPL Scope Mini League, and I've actually changed the Mini League code. You can do that now. You can regenerate the league code, so it's kind of easy. It's hpxeri. It's at least only letters, so it might be easier to remember for me. But I might also try to regenerate it and get it even easier. I'm gonna have to look into that. But yeah, please join the FPL Scope Mini League. Then you can fight against me and my co-host Kevin in the Mini League, and see if you can get to be the very prestigious Manager of the Week, where I actually feature your team on the podcast that I do every single week, where I talk about your team from the past game week, where you had the highest score, and I also talk about your team for the next game week and what you can do in the future with your team, pretty much. And that's going to be even more exciting now that we have the new transfer rule, where you can have, when I can actually have Managers of the Week, where they have 4 or 5 transfers available. I can play around with a lot of different things in FPL, so looking forward to do that as well. You can also see my rank history over me here. My rank last season, 8,812. Really, really happy to be inside the top 10k last season. My best rank ever was in the 11-12 season. I've played this game for quite a long time. I have quite a few good ranks as well throughout the years. My current rank is just my ID, my FPL ID. So if you want to check out my team throughout the season, you can join, or you can see my ID there, 21,909. Yeah, so you can use that to check on my team throughout the season as well, pretty much. And that's my current rank, I guess, because yeah, all else being equal, the rank is actually, or the ID is actually what gets you higher up in the rankings. So if you're early to make your team, you're closer to that number one ID, the better you're going to be when it comes to your final position in the ranking, pretty much. But yeah, with that out of the way, with all the teams out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative, and I hope you get to watch more videos. I'm gonna have some more videos before Friday, before the launch of FPL or the start of the season. So I hope you can subscribe to the channel and give this video a like as well if you appreciated all the tips that I have about all the teams. And also, like I said several times now, comment down below if there's anything you wonder about when it comes to lineups, or if you have any suggestions, or potentially just want to discuss potential starting lineups with me. Because yeah, all the more input I get, the better, pretty much, for this guide and yeah, for the team projections, pretty much. But with that out of the way, thank you for watching. As always, see you next time. Bye bye.